permanently in 5 minutes, but I'm here.
Thank you, Commissioner Maneri. All right. Cindy Lou, we have quorum.
Yep, you
I'm
do.
going to
Thanks.
start the record. Okay, I'll start the recording and we're on live, folks. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our Racial Equity and Policing Commission meeting, the first of many to begin our phase 2. I just wanted to turn our attention to welcome the commissioner, staff, officers, the public, and Racial Equity and Policing Commission, and that this meeting will be an electronic meeting pursuant to the commission's determination that conducting the meeting at a physical location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The commission meeting will not have a physical location and all attendees will connect remotely. Members of the public may provide public comment by joining through Zoom. All right, so we moved a little bit around so that Coletta could introduce me since I'm going to be running the meeting and didn't want to leave that for the middle of the meeting. So I'll turn the time over to Coletta and then we'll do a roll call.
Thank you so much, Moana. So, hi, commissioners. Thank you for welcoming or for returning for phase 2. We are so excited to see you all back. And I just wanted to introduce Moana. So, as many of you already know, I'm the new Chief Equity Officer, and we recently did a search for our equity manager, and Moana was selected. I'm super excited to have her back at the city on our team. And so for those of you who may not know, Moana used to work at the city as a policy advisor for human rights issues. In that role, she was responsible for managing the Human Rights Commission, and she will return to doing so under this new role as equity manager. Also, she used to be a community liaison in the previous administration. And so we're so happy to have Moana back. She's a Harvard grad. And she is a long-term resident of Salt Lake City. And so we are just happy to have her expertise and her institutional knowledge here with us. And I know that you all are going to be in great hands as she goes forward to support and to manage your commission. And I'm not totally disappearing. So please know I will be popping in and out of these meetings. And hopefully, like Moana said, one day we can resume in person. But for now, I will be coming in and out of the virtual space just to make sure that you all have what you need to move forward. But Moana is amazing. She's going to be a great person to work with. And I also want to open the floor to Moana to say anything about herself that she would like for you to know in addition to what I just shared. So
thanks, Coletta. No pressure with that introduction. I'm glad that we've all been able to interface through text and email before even meeting you here. The first thing I just want to say, I want to thank all of you for your support and grace through this transition as the equity manager. In preparation for this meeting, I've really felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the foundational work that all of you have done leading up to this phase 2, especially the commissioners. Like I was able to review a lot of the videos and the report, and I could really feel the hard work that is in it. And all of you have spent countless hours through this whole last year. So I just want to say that I'm really grateful for that foundational work. I'm also grateful to the mayor and the city council for being able to convene and also codify this group so that we're able to continue this work into phase 2. And the staff that are here today who, after today, learning all the different moving parts and pieces, it takes the whole village to put on a meeting like this, especially virtually, which because I was here when there wasn't a pandemic, I had to kind of get brought into. So thank you, Coletta, Cindy Lou, the council staff, and everyone else who is just in the city library for making this possible today. I also want to say and note this, that I really feel the weight and the importance of this commission on both an institutional and personal level. I know that the success of this commission surely impacts me presently as a Salt Lake City resident and well into the future for my community and for my own children who live here and I'm raising here in Salt Lake City. In honesty, the last couple of years, I've felt kind of pessimistic in the current climate of the world. But as a descendant myself of voyagers, I recognize that there have always been tough seas and places to be. So with that extended metaphor in mind, I want to thank you all as my fellow voyagers for going into uncharted waters and sharing time and space to do our small and challenging part in the continuation of our community. And so I think that that is so very important. And sometimes with trying to change institutions, it's the small, continued effort of a small group of folks like you all that are able to make big things happen. So thank you for just allowing me in this space and for me to be on the admin side to move things along. I'm excited to work with you all, and so let's get to work. Thank you.
Awesome, welcome.
All right, so this is, I think, a new portion of our agenda. It's going to be an open dialogue portion. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coletta, but we wanted to make sure that you all had space to kind of share and not feel so restricted by all of the different roles and things of what's happening within the community, as well as your perspective. So I'll just read off what we have in the agenda. During this portion of the meeting, commissioners may raise topics and discuss current events that may impact or influence the commission's overall work. Discussions and deliberations to provide recommendations to the mayor and city council regarding the Salt Lake City Police Department, policies, budget, and culture. So no action will be taken during this section of the meeting, and matters discussed during this section of the meeting may be scheduled on a subsequent agenda. So then I will just we'll be keeping notes, and then we can follow up with whatever things that you bring up. And of course, when we were creating this agenda, we aren't foreseeing what's happening in the media. So a lot of things that have happened in the past couple of days, we just want to open the floor to you all for a few minutes, and then we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. All right, so I've learned, even with my working in the university, just letting it linger just a little bit, and that one person will be like, actually, I do have something to say. So we'll keep on going.
Moana,
Oh,
I think
do I see a hand?
MJ wanted
Oh.
to say something.
All right, Commissioner Powell, you have the floor.
Well, you were 1000% correct. I like to take up a lot of time now, and I'm trying to make a better effort this year, being more, listening more. So in terms of what I've personally observed in the community the past few days, a sense of togetherness like that, of which I haven't seen since the peaceful protests of last year. I also think the tragic death of Aaron Lowe is an accurate representation of why this line of work is so important. If you were able to attend the meeting the University of Utah held yesterday for faculty and staff, you would know Aaron Lowe was a proud young Black man and a representative of the African American community at the University of Utah, not only as an athlete, but also as a mentor to young men on his team, young men that actually, some of the few which graduated from my high school. And there is a sense of loss in the African American community that when a young man or a young person dies due to gun violence, it causes traumatic pain that really makes the youth question their safety. Whether you're driving down the street or you're at a house party with your friends, there's this kind of fear that tends to follow you and linger with you as a young person of color in a predominantly white state. You stick out, and while it's also been healing to have so many allies come and offer support, it's also difficult to also offer these kind of answers. I have primarily questions as a young person of color as to what led to that night. And I can only pray that all parties involved will find what works best for them. And I pray for everyone that's been affected, including the young person that pulled that trigger that night. I question what led that person to that route in their life. And I also hope that the decisions we can make here on this commission, and also the thought processes we can generate with these conversations, can lead to a greater conversation where young men like Aaron Lowe don't have to voice their concern of their safety, whether it's gun violence at a party or from an officer, which he did voice in a poem academically. So I just wanted to bring his attention and awareness to the table today, as the constituency I'm a part of is the demographic of young Black academics and scholars and athletes. And again, I pray for his friends, family, and I pray for the successful investigation and justice brought by SLCPD. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. That very powerful note of speaking Aaron Lowe's name here. If there are no other additions, we'll move forward on our agenda. Thank you. At this moment, at this time, we're going to open the floor for public comment. We will be providing any attendees with 1 or 2 minutes of time. And that per the public meeting guidelines, we ask that you keep comments free of discriminatory language, referring to a person or group based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, or other gender identity factor. Items or comments that disrupt the meeting, intimidate other participants, or that may cause safety concern are not allowed. Claudia, you may have to move me along on this if there.
So right now, Moana, I don't see any attendees in the webinar here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an additional phone line or something else that was provided in order for people to call in?
Just through Zoom, to call through Zoom. So the other 800 was not. We do have Darlene, oh, Commissioner McDonald.
Okay, and before we
Yes.
move to Commissioner McDonald, I'm sorry, Commissioner
Oh,
McDonald,
okay.
I just want to acknowledge that we won't have any public comment then, Moana, because we don't have
Okay.
any additional public members on the line.
Okay.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
I'm
Okay,
sorry,
then.
Commissioner McDonald. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. I was just curious as to how the public became aware that we were entering phase 2 and that there will be an opportunity for public participation.
So
So, Kalita, go ahead.
Commissioner McDonald, we're still currently posting on the public website, and the website that was available from the facilitators is still up and going. In addition to that, as we move forward, we will start pushing out a newsletter that's going to start coming out from our office, and it's going to be internal and external. And so we'll be pushing out racial equity and policing notices to the community that way. Also, we briefed the city council recently, and I see Allison on the line, but we briefed the city council recently to let them know that phase 2 was coming, and their meetings are public. So that was an opportunity to advertise. And if I'm not mistaken, Allison, please correct me, but I believe that a notice went out through the distribution list that city council uses to constituents as an announcement of phase 2.
Well, thanks for asking the question I don't know the answer to, Coletta. I assume that is true. If someone told you it was true from my office, then it is true. I just didn't get it. But I do want to say yes, for the last 4 city council meetings, we have been announcing September 29th as the first meeting of the second year of the commission. I do want to point out that perhaps not everyone in Salt Lake City tunes into city council meetings every week, but for those who might have watched, we were talking about it.
And just as one last follow-up, Commissioner McDonald, we are doing more community outreach through the local community organizations that are already doing this work in the community. And so we will be sending out flyers and information to them so that the communities that they serve will be aware that this meeting is open to the public.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Commissioner McDonald. And as I take over these meetings, we'll be posting earlier to make sure that everyone is aware with the website and everything. And we attended the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander SLCPD meeting and shared that we'd be moving into phase 2. So we'll do on the ground work since we are meeting in person in those smaller groups and making sure, as Coletta said, to give out flyers and the links. Thank you. Just checking for any hands. Okay. So we'll move to item 5, and we will give time over to Chief Lee to be talking about the Community Health Access Team, or CHAT.
Thanks, Moana. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carl Lieb. I'm the Salt Lake City Fire Chief, and I have with me today my Assistant Chief, Chris Milne. He's listening in, if not on camera. But Chief Milne oversees my administrative division, which includes our medical bureau. So today I just want to spend just a brief amount of time discussing a new fire department initiative that I recently proposed to Salt Lake City administration. We call it, as Moana said, we call it CHAT, and it's short for Community Health Access Team. And we believe it can fill a gap between our EMS patients out in the field and the service providers that they actually need, rather than just 911 emergency service, which is what we provide. And we see a need for more. We see a need for a more expanded toolbox. So let me just tell you really briefly what it encompasses. See if I can pull it up on our screen here. If I can post-it notes all over.
Chief Leib, I think you may have muted yourself. We can see your screen, we just can't hear you.
Yeah.
I was
It
so
looks like
impressed that the chief was able to show the PowerPoint. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good.
He's working to resolve his technology right now. He'll
There
be
he
back
is.
in just a moment.
Oh,
There he is.
so he
Commissioners,
needed two
I know
screens.
your time is valuable. Let me just tell you what chat is. I won't worry about the one page. I wasn't going to beat you up with a PowerPoint anyway. But essentially what it is we're trying to team social workers up with a firefighter or a firefighter team and respond out in the field as at least a two-person unit, one firefighter, one social worker, to specific types of calls. And these would be the kind of what we call the low acuity calls that don't involve the threat of a weapon or immediate hostility or violence. So we're talking about calls like public assist, maybe intoxicated individuals, suicide attempts that don't involve a weapon again, maybe some welfare checks, things like that. And we think that the team could make a difference in calls like that. And we want to kind of garner some data, obviously, as we get this thing rolling, if we get this thing rolling, and see if we can expand those calls and maybe change the makeup of the team. So that's the first thing. Second thing, we anticipated we respond to individuals in need of assistance beyond which we could provide with firefighters, with emergency services. Because traditionally, we essentially we assess our patients. Some require life-saving measures, some do not. But we end up taking them to emergency department, which is obviously not the service provider that they all need. So we'd like to vary that a little bit and increase, the knowledge and the background and the experience we have to deal with all kinds of public health issues, not just emergent physical issues. So it's what we do essentially all day. We respond to 30,000 unique calls a year, and 80% of them are medical assessments. So that is approximately 24,000 calls. And really about 70% of those medical calls are basic life support calls, which means they're not immediately life-threatening. Ideally, a lot of those patients could probably be benefited from an experienced social worker in addition to an experienced firefighter who can provide that immediate health care if necessary, but a social worker who might be able to link that patient up with the kind of services they really need and avoid that transport to an emergency room, which may or may not be able to provide those services. And ultimately, that patient ends up being discharged within the next 24 hours, and they're back in the same situation they were in. So we think a team like this could connect individuals to answers, information, and then give them a warm handoff to service providers. And we're talking, there's any number of service providers available in Salt Lake. USARA, First Step House, we got the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, formerly UNI, we got VOA, MCOT, and it goes on and on. And right now, we just don't have that ability. We don't have that training. We don't have that licensure. And I think that this program might really fly with the help of social workers. Lastly, we see it helping to establish a treatment plan for these individuals. Not that that's going to work for every patient. We're not so naive to think that this is going to be the cure-all, for community health issues that we have in Salt Lake right now. But we think it can make a difference. We have to start somewhere. And we think in the fire department, we're ideally suited for this kind of initiative. I mean, this is what we do day in and day out. We really don't fight fires all the time. We're certainly capable of that, and we're ready to do that. But most of our work is emergency medical service. We deal with patients all day long. So I think it gives people hope. You know, we have to start somewhere. It gives people hope for those who want help but don't know where to get it. And maybe it's going to give people some hope for patients that cannot help themselves. And I think it's time that the fire department gets involved in community health. We have been implementing light, more nimble vehicles for the last 5 years to do emergency response, to keep our heavy apparatus in the station so they can go on calls where they're really needed. But we want to be sustainable. We want to be progressive, and we want to be part of the issues we're seeing in Salt Lake. So with the chat team, we think this is a step in the right direction. What we see as the strengths, I mentioned a few of them. The fire department responds to every call we receive. We don't have a queue. I've got 16 apparatus in the field every day, in addition to a couple of medical response team, which are our small, nimble 2-person firefighter teams, and community health paramedics, which currently follow up on the referrals that our crews provide them for people who need help, additionally to what we can provide. So we're already doing these things, and we are going to go on these calls. If the nearest engine isn't capable, or if one of our light medical response teams isn't available, you're going to get another engine, or you're going to get another medical response team. But people will show up. So there is no delay. We're going to be there. Normally, we're there within 4 minutes. Other strengths that we see, we do have a good rapport and a good level of trust with our community. We are the #1 rated Salt Lake City service provider, as we found out from a city council survey just this spring. We're tied with the library. I got to give kudos to the library because I like the Salt Lake City library system as well. But I think that matters. We're trying to make this a little bit less formal than the current operations that we see now. So if we can maybe possibly be a little less intimidating, a little less, maybe less badge and more conversation, maybe that'll help. We think we're well positioned to do that. So that's kind of how we want to design it. We certainly want to be identified as firefighters, but we don't need to come, you know, screaming into every scene and flash the lights and the badge. And I think you know what I mean. We're trying to have a softer approach. The challenges we see, safety. I don't want to put a social worker or any firefighter in a dangerous situation. Now, we do this kind of thing every day with the firefighters. The job is inherently dangerous, but that doesn't mean that I want to risk someone being hurt with this program or any of my programs or any of my firefighters, and certainly not a social worker who might be less experienced with this kind of thing, depending on who we find that's interested in this role. So we want to keep going. It's important that we triage the calls with SLC 911. We are working with them now to see if this is possible. They believe that it is, and be very specific on the types of calls that we send this team on. Other concerns, staffing. We understand it's difficult to find social workers right now. We don't know if it will be different for the fire department to recruit staffing, or to recruit social workers. We're going to find out, hopefully. But we're going to need 3 initially, 2 in the field, and then one licensed social worker to manage those 2. So we'll see how the recruitment goes. And lastly, we do think there will be an overlap with the co-responder model that's currently going on with the police department. But we do have good communication with our partners across the hall here, and I anticipate that we'll continue to have really good communication with Jessica Weaver, who directs their social workers, with the director that we would hire on the fire side. And we've also spoken with Jessica, and she thinks this would actually be a useful initiative as well. And I've spoken with Chief Brown as well, and he's all in favor of anything that's going to help our residents and our people that are in need. So that is chat. I appreciate you just listening to it and kind of trying to absorb that in a really short period of time. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions, or Chief Milne can as well.
Chief, did you talk to Chief Brown and brag that you guys were #1 in the community? I was just wondering if you're like, fire's it.
Commissioner, I leave that in my back pocket for when I need it. If I get in a difficult situation with Chief Brown, I just say, let's look at the survey, Mike.
Moana, I think this is recorded, so make sure you save it so we could use it later. Oh, Chief, you know, it's so funny that you're bringing this up because I had talked to one of your firefighter folks, Chad, I think Jefferson, and I brought this up because we had talked in last year. We had talked about the Denver Star program.
Yep.
You know, it sounds similar model, but there was a lot of confusion because they thought they were part of the police department, and so I know Jessica Waters was a little bit worried that if it was all thrown into one, how is that going to look like? I think it sounds great that y'all would be able to do that separately, fire with their social workers, and then the CIT with their social workers. I don't know how y'all are going to compete for social workers, but I guess maybe that'll be another thing you could talk to or brag with Chief Brown about. I know my biggest concern is the being able to triage it through the 911 call. Their intense training they're probably going to have to get. I mean, when are they going to have to send PD? When are they not? All that type of stuff. Steve, Chief Van Jordan, can you talk a little bit more about that? I think you have a better understanding of that. And I hope I put you on the spot because you always do that to me.
Wow, you're just gonna get you're just gonna wrap everybody into this. You got Chief Brown, you got me. I have the same concern about dispatch. I don't think it's something that cannot be overcome. I'm excited to hear that you're already doing that work. I did have a question about the structure of the dispatching of 911 services with police and fire, if there's already crossover, you know, with those processes. I also wondered about, you talked about that weight, and some of the calls that you described could be addressed by chat. I think law enforcement responds to, so I assume there'd be a balance there. But if there is, curious about that overlap between the medical professionals in chat and perhaps the social workers in the co-response model, because occasionally there may be overlap between all of those factors on a particular call out in the field. And I remember back in the day, sometimes you'd have a medical call where firefighters were just eager to get in there, but the scene was not yet deemed safe. So you're waiting for law enforcement to respond. So just curious about some of your protocols on that to help maximize the safety. I appreciate you addressing that. And then since I have the floor, didn't volunteer for it, but I have it. You know, we're the racial equity and policing subcommittee, and some of the discussions that we've had in the past is disproportionate access to community services for communities of color. Firefighters, in my experience, community interaction tends to be easier because you're not taking people to jail and you have different role, but you're still part of the government and you're still part of the institution. And I wonder what thoughts you might have had for working with the community to increase the trust, to overcome those impediments, to actually be able to utilize the services that you're bringing. Because I think you're ideally suited for it, but I think we should be intentional about getting access to ensure it's equitable.
Yeah, fair questions, Commissioner. Thank you. On the safety issue, you're right. I mean, we acknowledge there's going to be some overlap with the police department, and of course, we're not sure how that's going to look yet. But one of the big differences between what the co-responder police program is made up right now as opposed to chat is the co-responder model is not dispatched right now. They're not dispatched right out of the public safety building. We are proposing that chat would be dispatched. So we will work with dispatch, determine what type of calls they will go on. You're right, some of these calls do include a police officer. So we would anticipate that officer would continue to come and meet our chat team. If the chat arrived on scene and they didn't feel comfortable with the situation, of course, then they don't stop. They just proceed. It's the same protocol we have for our fire engines and fire trucks and crews. There are some calls, if some of the commissioners, I'm assuming most of you are aware of this, so forgive me if I'm rattling, but there are some calls in the field for the fire department which we need scene safety. We need a police officer there before we'll ever get out of the fire apparatus, and that would continue. So our firefighters understand that if they're not comfortable with what they see or what they hear or just what they feel, there is no shame, there is no hesitation to just move out of that situation. That's the way we train. That is the responsibility of our captains, which are our mid-level supervisors in the field. So I think that would continue. Chat would just mean that on some of these calls, we would be the primary resource that arrives. And in some cases, police officers won't be needed. But in some cases there will be. And I've asked Chief Brown to support this program in that specific way. If we need an officer, Chief Brown, we're still gonna call for an officer, and it's gotta be kind of a priority call, because we can't do anything on scene without security. But we do believe as a fire department, there are some calls where a police officer is not needed. We'll just get that out there. I know there are some individuals, I think, that believe that there always needs to be a police officer there. And from my experience, and I think from Chief Milne's experience who's listening in, I don't think that is always the case. So we want to fill that gap. On the outreach, recruitment and outreach. So we have a pretty comprehensive community relationship division here. And it encompasses firefighter development, and it encompasses recruitment and outreach for firefighters. It encompasses communication with underserved communities throughout Salt Lake. And I think through those channels that we already have, that exist and in place, and they're very fruitful, we get a lot of good communication with our community. And as you said, Commissioner, I think just de facto, because of the nature of our job, we do get more communication. We don't take people to jail. We don't have that difficult job. I think through those communication channels, we can inform people about chat and what it's about and what they can expect, and how we'll go about our work on scene there. So I think that would be a good venue for us to get the word out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. By the way, I agree with you. Not every call requires law enforcement, and sometimes you don't know till you're there. So I really appreciate you taking the time to respond to that.
You're welcome.
Hey, Chief Lieb, can I add something real quick too? Is talking with dispatch, they're very certain that they can work out the coding. They have similar, similar protocols already set up to dispatch the MCOT team. So they've been very, very positive towards this and doing that. But also we want to leave it flexible so that any situation, as soon as we find out that it's different than what it was dispatched as, that happens a lot, that we can also call for that resource. So if a police officer gets there thinking that it's one way, but then assesses and says, you know what, chat can take care of us, then they can call for chat and we'll get right out there. So we're really excited and optimistic about this.
Yeah, excited about that concept too. Thanks, guys.
Commissioner Powell, I think. Commissioner Powell.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Hello. I had a quick question as towards if we were to roll out this initiative, and what is the equivalent to the field training officer position within the fire department? And one of our primary focuses this last year was to ensure that we had field trainers of color leading these kind of training scenarios. And since we're looking at equity through a racial lens through this commission's work, what are your ideas, thoughts, or concerns about your department's ability to staff those training positions with people of color? And within that framework too, how would you incorporate, now that racism has been declared a moral and public health crisis at the health department, at the city level, what connections can you make to that and essentially how can you move forward with making a sustainable progressive change like you first stated. I know that's kind of an overreaching emphasis, but in terms of what I'm trying to understand is, would we be able to roll this out with trainers of color? And would we be able to progressively and sustainably establish this program with the health department's support?
Very good. Thank you. I am always looking for opportunities to diversify this fire department. I will tell you that, whether that's a trainer or whether that is one of my support division civilians, or whether it's a firefighter, quite honestly, because I want those varied experiences. I want those varied backgrounds. You know, we need to look at the same problems differently all the time, and that's what diversity will bring us. You know, I need different perspectives, different ways to solve these things, because we can't solve them all. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect it to get better, right? What is that? That's idiocy, isn't it? Isn't that the definition of idiocy? So yeah, I'm always looking for that. I would love to see that. We spend a lot of time when we do recruitment and outreach just for the fire department, explaining what the job is, because a lot of individuals of color don't understand what the job entails, right? They think that you have to be 6'4" and bulky, and you have to be able to swing from a rope with an axe in one hand, you know, and a baby in the other, because that's what you see on Chicago Fire. So once we accomplish that, we get people who are actually interested in this job, because it's such a rewarding profession. You know, we get to help people, and people welcome us into their homes and their businesses. So it's an ongoing challenge, but we've been successful. My goal has been to increase the diversity on this job by 2% every 2 years, and we've been doing that for the last 8 now, and we have met those goals. And we're still moving forward, and I just keep adding people to recruitment and outreach because it's so important. But the number one way that we become successful is to demonstrate the diversity we have on the job. You know, when people see people who look like them getting off a fire engine, I can't mimic that any other way than for them to see people on the job. So we are well aware of that. And I have spoken with so many chiefs from across the country, particularly the progressive cities, to find out, you know, how they do this. And that's the key. You have to utilize the individuals of color that you have on the job right now. So that applies to your question, Commissioner. I would love to find some individuals of color to do this kind of training, or to act in the social worker role. You know, that would be awesome. Your first question about what's the training like for a firefighter, I think you were maybe going towards a CIT specific. What's the equivalent in the fire department to a CIT officer? Right now, we don't have that equivalent. We have limited mental health training for our EMTs and our paramedics. So both those trainings are really heavy on saving the person's life right there in the first 10 minutes. So they don't get a lot of mental health training or substance abuse training. They get a lot of trauma training. And those are the kind of people you want when things are really bad. But they're not so great at connecting an individual with the correct service provider, right? They're sympathetic, but they just don't know how to do it. So thus the social workers. I think that's a good pairing. I hope that answered most of what you were after, Commissioner Powell.
Almost certainly answered my questions. Thank you, Chief Lee. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And it's definitely going to be in my interest to look deeper into how we can hopefully raise a larger conversation as commissioners to maybe look at funding and establishing that type of training for your fire department.
You're great. We would be interested in receiving that kind of training.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell, and if anyone else. Thank you, Chief Lee, for joining us and sharing about chat. And there's a couple of folks that wanted I think your slides, and I can connect with your people to grab it with Jesse.
We'll do, Moana. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you. I'll
thank
get
you,
it
Chief
over
Lee.
to you. And thanks, Commission. Have a good evening.
All right, we'll be moving to our next portion of the agenda, which will be policy and procedure discussion. So since the commission was formally recognized through Ordinance 50 of 2021, we are having the commission, the document that I sent out to all of you, review the policies and procedures associated with the commission. I'm going to enlist the help of Coletta and our attorneys team and Cindy Lou to help me with this portion, since I am also getting to know it and understand all the transitions that happened prior to me coming into this position. So during the time of Coletta.
Thank you so much, Moana. So did all the commissioners receive the policy document? Okay. And so you'll see that Commissioner Prospero said he doesn't know. Commissioner Prospero,
I'm looking for it right now.
we will make sure that you get that document again. Moana, can we resend that document to Commissioner Prospero?
Yes, let me send it now.
Thank you.
I may have it already, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So this document basically lays out some meeting protocols moving forward, the frequency of meetings, and the chair vice chair model that we would love to discuss with you all today. As you know, previously, you all had core commissioners, and there were 6 core commissioners, but under the new ordinance, there's not a core commission group that now turns into a chair vice chair model. And so we wanted to see if, one, you all had any questions about what you reviewed. But Moana's right. We have Cindy Lou here as a recorder, and we also have Hannah Vickery on the line if there are any legal questions. And we wanted to just go through the document and see if you all had any questions or concerns, because we would like to adopt the document if you all do not have any changes or questions or concerns that we need to address first. So I'm going to yield some time to Cindy Lou. If you have anything additional, Cindy Lou, that you like to add about the policies document.
Oh, more or less, we're trying to formalize after the practices that you guys instituted. There are, as Coletta noted, some changes to the way things were handled. But for the majority of it, we're trying to make sure that we're doing it the way that the commission desires. Coletta, did you want me to walk through each point? Or do you?
Yes, if you don't mind, Cindy Lou, I think that would be great, because I want to make sure that also every commissioner has the opportunity to know what the changes are.
Of course. So I'll just start. I'm happy to share my screen, but I also find it valuable to see one another. So if you have it pulled up elsewhere, you could reference it there. The first section is titled Organization, where we discuss the election of the chair and vice chair. And in the policy, it indicates that it's only a term of 1 year, and it's for the first meeting in September. So that would be now, where you get to elect your chair and vice chair. Orientation is also an added component where we suggest that there is an orientation with new commissioners so they understand how the meetings work, when you receive information, and who the appropriate staff member to contact for questions. And then the commission training, this was actually done last year in 2020, that there was grandma and open meeting training. We're just putting that into policy that it's a necessary part of each board and commission. We went through the duties of the chair, which would include development of the agenda. And I'm going to breathe for a minute because that was a lot that I just presented. Does anybody have questions, concerns, or thoughts on just those 3 points? Chair, vice chair, orientation, or training? No? Okay. We listed out the duties of the chair, which will include presiding at the meeting and general direction, development of the agenda and scheduling, and present opportunities for the commission to vote on business matters. You'll also, as the chair, they would serve as a resource for media contacts or select designees, as they had done in the past, for media representation on topics or commission business items. And then the vice chair would assume all duties listed in the chair's absence if the chair is absent. And should the chair resign, the vice chair will serve until the elections are held. Then we listed out the duties of the equity manager, which is Moana's new role. And she'll be doing the minutes, the noticing, the attendance of the meeting, and providing you all the materials for the meeting. As Moana mentioned before, our goal is always to provide that information 3 days in advance to your meeting. So as these roles get defined, we'll roll out like a schedule, is what I anticipate from Moana and Coletta, so that things have an expectation timeline. One of the strongest points that we wanted to get adopted in policy is that you reserve the right to have electronic meetings, both under the necessity of health and safety, but also as a hybrid opportunity to enhance accessibility to the commission for the public and the board and commission members. So that's point number 6 under A. The quorum is defined as 8 members, and subcommittees will be defined by the chair and could meet monthly with staff support. So subcommittees previously divided up with help with the facilitator. It's not that they need to change, but that the priorities of the commission will evolve as, how do I say this? As you guys break down the system, hopefully the subcommittees can address things in a different light or in the same light if that's needed. Then we went ahead and explained the rights and duties of the Racial Equity and Policing Commission members. So before I go into that one, are there any questions with any of the other content I've reviewed? Or comments, feedback? We're open to edits tonight too.
Was there language about the number of commissioners? I saw that it was there for a quorum, but I didn't see what a commission is composed of.
That's a great question. Thank you. So the commission composition is actually in the ordinance of the city code. So the policies pull out basically what your practice is and how you want the commission to run, but the ordinance defines it as a 15-member commission.
Thank you.
And right now, just to let you all know, there's 14 members and we're seeking the 15th, and we'll be promoting that and sharing flyers with that shortly.
So one of the ways that the ordinance changed this was that it put it into established the commission as a mayor's board of commission, which means there's an application process. And then the commission has the option to interview applicants, and then they go to the mayor. So that is part of the development of this commission, to be inclusive and ensure that we're capturing the representation that is the goal of this committee, of this commission, I guess. So there's only 2 points that we have right now for commission members, and one is that we encourage meeting attendance, and the second is that there is a conflict of interest form that we're finalizing, or working on, I should say, that it's based on the ethics of chapter 2.44 of Salt Lake City Code, which reads that the REP Commission shall not participate in or be present at the hearing or disposition of any matter in which that member has a conflict of interest. So I visited with Hannah earlier today and we discussed an ethics training that we'll be looking to hold. That would be later this year, early next year. We recognize that this is a commission formed out of necessity and value, and it's not something we've done before. So I'm going to put an emphasis on this, that it's a financial interest rather than like an association, because the association is why you're here. We do list the order of business for the agenda, and note that that includes the open discussion dialogue language that Moana led out with today to further open up the opportunity for commissioners to bring up points of matter that are happening in current events that affect the policing department and the decisions you make in your recommendations. And then we just went ahead to talk about the public meeting guidelines and then the reporting structure that the Racial Equity and Policing will share the information that you're reviewing and recommending with the HRC Commission. So that was also a change in the membership, that the HRC Commission and the REP Commission are working more collaboratively together, with 2 members of the Racial Equity and Policing Commission being on the Human Rights Commission of the city. And so there's a shared information through that channel, but also in your formal work that you're sharing one with another, the content on how to change things in the city. And then the last point was just that the commission, in collaboration with the chief equity officer and equity manager, would report to the council and the mayor no less than once per calendar year. And that is a report made in writing, but can also be, obviously, it would be encouraged to be an opportunity to sit before the council and mayor as well to share your findings and recommendations, as was done with the facilitators last year. So it's not a preclusion, like you can only do it once. It's just, it is listed in the policy to do so once, at least. So I'll open it up for comments and feedback that you guys have, suggestions or changes.
Cindy, I'm not sure if I missed this or if you covered this, but how are we recruiting or pursuing that 15th person?
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and let Moana and Coletta address that. Looks like Coletta unmuted.
So there's currently an application open, Commissioner Johnson, and we will be posting it on our social medias and also sending out notification through the channels that I mentioned earlier to Commissioner McDonald that the application is open. And there's a place on our website for anyone who's interested from the public to apply. And then once once people apply, we will bring those applications back to your commission for you to review. And then you would be able to let us know who the top candidates that you are recommending. And then those recommendations will be taken directly back to the mayor for consideration. And once she takes the recommendation into account, it gets sent to City Council for advice and consent.
Okay, thank you.
And I also do want to, I also do want to acknowledge that we do recognize that there may be a digital divide for some people who would like to apply. We do not want to make the application inaccessible. And so if there are any members of the public who do not have access to apply by computer or through the link that's on the website, we just ask that they notify us by contacting our office, and we will make sure that we provide a way for them to apply to the commission. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And I'll just add, I don't think that the idea of sharing this work with your colleagues and who you associate with in your groups is frowned upon. I mean, it's strongly encouraged, actually, that representation from your communities as you were kind of pulled out and brought into the commission is appreciated. And we certainly would like to have more people brought into it from your recommendation, or send them towards the application, I guess.
And Commissioner Johnson, we can share, if it hasn't already been shared, we'll make sure to share the link with you all so that you have access to the application and can share it with your networks.
Thank you. I believe the Utah Black Chamber would like to put that on their site.
Coletta,
Sure, yeah.
or Cindy, is there a deadline that we're looking at when this position needs to be filled? And then is there any language around whether what the commission can or can't do without all members?
That's a great question. I'll just start by, applications are always welcome and received. So if there's a vacancy, or even if there's not a vacancy, the city is taking applications. So interested individuals are always encouraged to apply. When there is a vacancy, that's when the position or the candidate comes forward to the commission, and you guys can select, right, and provide your recommendation. So I wouldn't say that there's a deadline. The point that we will always try to carry is that you must have a quorum of membership. So your quorum is 8. We always try to get more than that, obviously, both for conversation and topic and debate and development of these policy changes. So we'll always strive to be at 15, but to take action as a commission, you must have 8. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for explaining.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for Cindy Lou and Coletta? All right, so we will move to the next. Oh, I made a
Yeah,
note for this.
Moana, do you mind if I ask one question? One of the things that we did put in the policy was the standard for action by this commission is on the basis of consensus still. If that's agreeable to you, I see some nods, except for the reason of requiring like a roll call vote, which on some instances we still will, like for the chair, vice chair election, we would require a roll call vote. But for like this development of this policy, our question to you is, do you accept this under your consensus method? Or would you like a roll call vote? Would you like more time to review it? Without a chair guiding this, I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth. I just want to know where you want us to go with this one. And there's my consensus. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't an appropriate motion, but does everyone feel comfortable? If you do not feel comfortable, I guess was the way Dante would say it. If you do not feel comfortable with the proposed policies, would you please let me know, raise your hand or speak up? Otherwise, we can consider these as adopted policies of the commission.
If the list of duties looks kind of light to me, and I appreciate that. Is there language about acting in the interest of community? I don't know. And if we did want to change the policy later, how onerous is that? Because I'm comfortable with this now, but if we think of things, can we update it in the future after Mo and Nicole are the chair and vice chair?
Great questions. The policies can be updated by the commission at any time.
Okay.
So they just need to be listed on the agenda. So as far as like a method of getting it there, you would inform the agenda that you wanted to update a policy and then coordinate with them and staff on how to make sure that that's placed on the agenda for action. And I apologize, I forgot your first question. The Mo and Nicole threw me off.
Just, I think you should adopt this. Okay. I think you should adopt this because we need to get to work, right? And thank you for preparing it. I think that the duties, showing up to the meeting and not having a conflict of interest are critical, but maybe we can think of some detail to go in there. I don't want to bog it down with a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy, but before I was going to vote to lock it in, I wanted to make sure that it was a flexible document, which I have the answer to. So thanks for doing the legwork, and I'm in favor of it.
Can I ask one question before we vote? Also the timing, I think it was in the Cindy Lou or Coletta can speak to this, for the meeting would be once a month. And this is in the ordinance, is that correct?
It is in the ordinance, and the subcommittee language for subcommittee meetings is in the policy. And just for clarification here, so initially, prior to the ordinance being adopted, we met with core commissioners to talk about the meeting frequency and to propose to core commissioners that the meeting frequency be changed only so that in between meetings, we can actually get the work done that you all are recommending for us to go and do. And so one of the changes is we propose that you all have your full commission meeting once a month, because in times prior, you were meeting once every other week for the full commission meeting. And then we also proposed a change to your subcommittee meetings that you have at least one subcommittee once a month with city support or city staff support, so that we can all be able to cover those meetings, because please be mindful that it is 3 subcommittees right now, which that may change depending on what you all decide, but staff would need to cover those 3 subcommittee meetings in a month. So we're still talking 4 REP meetings in a month. But we just proposed that if you all decide to have additional subcommittee meetings, you all are allowed to do that, but staff may not be able to cover all of them. And so I just wanted to be transparent about that, because there was a question like, let's say the policy subcommittee decides to meet 10 times in 1 month. You all have the right to do that. Just please understand that staff may only be able to make 2 out of those 10 times. So just wanted to put that out here so that we're transparent about that. Any questions about the proposal for the meeting schedule? Yes, Commissioner Powell.
So what would we need in terms of heads for quorum for a subcommittee meeting? And what would be the way to go about communicating to the city that there's a collection of us wanting to meet about particular policy proposal or idea?
So subcommittee meetings, and Cindy Lou, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but subcommittee meetings were a meeting of commission members that was less than a quorum. And so we are still proposing that you all keep the subcommittees less than a quorum, only for reasons of posting and all the other requirements that come along if you do have more than a quorum. And so if you could keep your numbers less than a quorum, you are allowed to meet as many times as you would like as a subcommittee in the month. And we would just ask Commissioner Powell, that you would notify us through email, just to let us know that your subcommittee has decided to meet. And then if it's one where you're requesting staff support, that you would at least give us a 1.5 week notice if possible, so that we can get the staff together that's needed for that meeting. Cindy Lou, please feel free to chime in if I've misspoke.
I just wanted to add that one of the duties of the chair is to kind of not necessarily like spearhead all of the subcommittees, but make note of them. And so if the chair changes the next year, they may develop different subcommittees than the prior chair. There's always work to be done. And what we're trying to acknowledge is that you are here on your own time, and that the work is a heavy lift, and you've got a lot to do. And so we don't want to burn commission members out. So the idea is that the chair keeps that in mind when subcommittees are developed and created. So I would just add one piece to Coletta's comment about letting staff know, is that that's also with the understanding of the chair and the vice chair role.
Thank you to you both. Thank you.
And also too, just so you all know, the communication model will look similar to what happened with the core commissioner. Just imagine that we're now replacing that core commissioner position with the chair, vice chair. So now Moana will go directly to whoever you all select as your chair, vice chair, to run any questions by them on behalf of your commission.
And so do Wednesday evenings at 5 o'clock still work for everyone?
For me, it does.
For Commissioner, because we can maintain this time and do the once a month. I just want to make sure that I have it calendared, and then I can start sending out
Sorry,
months in advance.
did you say Wednesday,
Commissioner
right?
Banderi? Yes, just the same time.
Okay, yes, thanks.
Okay, we can keep that in order. And is this the last week of the month? And then we will just have it the same time every month, if everyone is okay with that. Then I'll send the dates out well in advance, and everyone can just block it out on their calendars. Okay. If no one has an objection to that, we'll move on. Cindy Lou, do I have to say the adoption of the policies?
I believe we received consensus, and so
Okay.
you're fine to go ahead. Thank you. It's been
Okay.
noted, they're adopted.
Thank you. And I will make note that the last Wednesday of each month at 5 p.m. Thank you all. Our next, so then the election of the chair and vice chair.
Nicole,
We'll be taking nominations. And I wanted to ask, can people also nominate themselves in this process?
I don't know why
Cindy, Lou?
Darlene's laughing. I was gonna nominate her.
Nope.
Oh, see, Andrew.
exactly. It was Darlene and Nicole the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know why you laughing.
So Moana, there's no rule in our policy that states that you cannot nominate yourself to be the chair.
Okay.
So I think we can take nominations first. So I've heard Nicole and Darlene both have been nominated. Are there any other nominations?
So
I have a
I
question.
spoke with, Commissioner.
While we're talking about nominations, so what exactly is the time constraint are we looking at here?
That's a good question.
The time constraint on a chair. So for the duties of the chair?
Vice chair, yes.
Okay.
Coletta, we were talking about this prior. You were saying about 5 was, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say approximately, Commissioner McDonald, maybe 5 to 7 hours for the month. And please know that I'm not calculating if something should happen, as happened last year where we had multiple incidents where the commission had to come together on an emergency's notice. So I just want to be sensitive to that fact that that number may increase. But on average, 5 to 7 hours, and that includes, like I said, Moana's probably constant contact with whoever the chair is to follow up on agenda items, to get meeting schedules solidified, also to talk about, any policies or things that are coming up that we need to make the commission aware of and get immediate feedback on.
So 5 to 7 hours for the chair.
Awesome.
Okay, and can this be, I guess I'm gonna ask some questions. Is this for the length of the commission, or is it on a rolling basis?
So it's a year.
1 year.
1 year, okay, 1 year. So I'm looking at you, Nicole. So so would the chair and the vice chair, would it be out of bound if they were to meet with each other to discuss different things before the meeting or after the meeting, just to make sure that they're on the same page, that sort of thing? Or to highlight priorities?
It's my understanding. I'm sorry, please go ahead, Moana.
I think that, I was just going to say that you'd probably be working with me closely as well as we develop the agendas, all the priorities, and what Cindy Lou was saying and Coletta was saying prior, a lot of the direction in terms of the subcommittees, those would be heavily weighing on the chair and vice chair to lead out so that we can quickly get answers back on an administrative side.
Okay.
And add on Coletta.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see Cindy Lou. I was just going to say, as long as you're not at quorum, you're not prevented from meeting. It's kind of like what happened with the court commissioner check-ins bi-weekly. And Cindy Lou, I see Cindy Lou took herself off of mute.
Yeah, I'll just add that it's encouraged. As the leadership of the commission, it's encouraged that you have an understanding together, and whomever that is. It's just that it's time that you'll take out of your schedule to make sure you guys are aligned. And then the coordination is with staff as well. So I'd say encouraged, Commissioner McDonald.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to say, just speaking for myself here, I'm not going to speak for Nicole, that I've been in the media a lot, and I have a presence in the media. So if someone would like to be able to get, I guess, get some exposure, and to be in front of issues and maybe in front of the camera if things were to happen, then maybe that person could speak up and become, a vice chair or a chair. That's kind of where I stand from. I don't mind doing it. I know my limitations when it comes to time, with everything else that I have going on in my life. I don't mind doing it, especially if there isn't anyone else. When I say I don't mind, I'm saying as a vice chair, not as a chair. So let me just put that out there. However, I will step back, and if someone else would like to say, hey, you know what, I want to do this, I want to put myself out there, then I will give them the floor. And to be able to do that, I don't mind doing it. If there isn't anyone else that would want to, I don't mind. But I'm okay with somebody else saying I'll do it.
So Commissioner Hawkins, who wasn't able to attend because of a family need, also put forth their name to be vice chair, not chair, but vice chair. I just wanted to make sure I relayed that information that was given to me. So that's also a possibility, Commissioner McDonald.
So do you mind, Moana, if I just, currently, I just want to be clear. I have two nominations. One was for Commissioner Salazar Hall, and then the other was Commissioner McDonald, who then suggested she be vice chair. So we only have one nomination for chair right now. Would you like to speak to that nomination, or are there any other nominations for chair? And Commissioner Salazar, I'm inviting you to speak to that nomination, unless there's others who would like to be nominated or have a nomination to share for chair. Everyone's nodding. Okay, so Commissioner Salazar Hall, would you like to speak to that nomination?
I'll accept it, but I'm going to counter nominate Dr. Prospero.
So thank you. Sorry, for my record then, can I do a roll call vote?
I disappeared.
Yeah, you did. I saw that. So before we get into vice chair, are you all right if I go ahead and take a roll call vote for the chair position? Okay, and I'm just going to call off and I'll be marking your vote. So Commissioner Anjuerden, if you'll just let me know.
I absolutely support Nicole as the chair of this commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Powell?
I strongly support Commissioner Salazar Hall's nomination for chair.
Commissioner Eldridge?
Yes, I strongly support as well.
Commissioner McDonald?
I strongly support Commissioner Salazar Hall as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Sagato?
I also support Commissioner Salazar Hall.
Thank you. Commissioner Benouri? Commissioner Benouri? Maybe some tech difficulty. Let me go to Commissioner Johnson.
I strongly support Commissioner Salazar Hall.
And Commissioner Prospero?
I support Nicole.
Okay. Commissioner Oman.
I'm more than happy to support Commissioner Salazar Hall.
Okay, I'll come back to Commissioner Benouri. Okay, we'll do an abstain. So we do have a majority there. So Commissioner Salazar Hall, you are the chair. And so from this, Moana, based on, would you like to speak now, Commissioner Salazar Hall, or after your vice chair is chosen? Okay, we'll go to after the vice chair. We have 3 nominations for vice chair based on my records. I have Commissioner McDonald, Commissioner Hawkins, and Commissioner Prospero.
I would like to remove my name.
Okay.
Monkey see, monkey do. So I would like to remove my name too. So I guess it's
Oh.
Hawkins.
Well,
I'm not gonna lie, Moises, the youth subcommittee has a lot of experience with you and you're our voice. We would support you in that position if you're interested.
Thank you. But no way. Hawkins is a much better commissioner than I. Especially we could talk bad about her right now because she's not here. So yes, Hawkins all the way.
Yeah, she's very good. I strongly support her in that role.
so I'll just take another roll call vote just to confirm we have the Commissioner Hawkins as the vice chair for the commission. Commissioner Angela Werden,
I absolutely support Tanya Hawkins.
Commissioner Salazar Hall,
I fully support Tanya Hawkins.
Commissioner Powell,
I fully support Commissioner Hawkins.
Commissioner Eldridge,
I support Commissioner Hawkins as well.
Commissioner McDonald,
I strongly support Commissioner Hawkins.
Commissioner Sagato,
I also support Commissioner Hawkins.
Commissioner Benuri, and Commissioner Johnson.
I'm sorry. Who was it again?
Commissioner Hawkins, Tanya Hawkins.
I support Commissioner Hawkins.
Thank you. And Commissioner Omen.
I support Commissioner Hawkins.
Am I saying your name correctly, Date?
Uman. That's right.
Uman. Thank you
But you're
for
pretty close.
correcting
So
me.
thank you. Yeah.
No, I appreciate the correction. All right, so we do have the roll call vote accounted for. Thank you. You have created your chair, vice chair selection for the year. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right. And I will be contacting you both shortly with lots of questions and answers. So congratulations. I think that is I don't have to read that portion. Is that correct? The tentative closed session?
No, we don't have any closed session tonight.
Okay.
We had it listed as tentative in case the commission requested one. There has not been a request for one.
Okay, perfect. So then move to adjourn. Is that the case until next month on October, the last Wednesday of the month? Do we have to have a second? Or first?
No, you're okay. The meeting
Okay.
is standing adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I think there's good consensus.
Thank you all.
in the meeting.
Consensus, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
We will see you next
Good
month.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Pozidania.